What's going on, guys? It's River Isco. Welcome back to the channel. With the release of 2025 core books and the apparent decline of Hasbro Wizards of the Coast, it seems like it's an end of an era. But what an era! The golden age of 5th edition, if you will. And instead of complaining about things or alarming the bells or anything like that, all I want to do is share my favorite parts of that era with others. And what better way to do that than top 10s? So let me welcome you to Ode to a Golden Age, where I'll be doing just that. Today I'm going to be going over my personal favorite top 10 monsters in D&D's 2014 Monster Manual. Other videos might be a bit more all-inclusive of 2014 books and modulars, but for this video, I just want to cover one book. And I'd really love this video to become a dialogue, so please go ahead and post a comment. Tell me your personal favorite monster in the 2014 Monster Manual. Even if it's a monster that I talk about, go ahead and tell me the reason why. And while you're doing that, you might as well hit like and subscribe and help out a new D&D channel. And now, let's get into it. 10. Beholder. The Pikachu of D&D. As synonymous with the franchise as Rolling Dice is. I mean, it's a classic. It's legitimately on the cover of the book. How do we not start off with this? Now, you're going to notice that I love the family system in D&D. Making a stronger and weaker version of a monster so you can have a proper battle with it at the appropriate level of the party is amazing. The Beholder is no stranger to this, having the Death Tyrant and Spectre being the stronger and weaker version of the Beholder respectively. The Beholder as a monster has you think very hard about how to approach and deal with it, especially if you're a spellcaster in any form. Hunter's Mark? No sir. Fiery Bolt? Definitely not. All while having this looming threat of death over you. The randomness of its smaller eyes and the oppressive magic nullifying field of the main eye makes this a creature that is not easy to take down. 9. Archmage. Flexibility comes to mind when I think of archmages. They can be good or bad, and as bad, they can be great low or mid level bosses, or the show-stopping BBG, as they usually have a plan to become an evil Lich King. It's a monster that kind of has a story inherently built into them, so you can basically just toss them in wherever you like, even if it's a small campaign that just connects one campaign to another. Archmages typically have underlings, and among those are usually other mages of varying strengths, lending to flexibility. Then, to emphasize just how flexible Archmages really and truly are, the stat block provided in the Monster Manual generally has what spells they would take for the 1st to 9th level spells, and is allowed to cast 3 spells upon itself before combat. So even if you don't think it's challenging enough, just let him buff himself before the party even gets in. These guys are the very definition of flexibility for Dungeon Masters. 8. Gith. Really only on here because of Baldur's Gate 3. But once I got into the lore of what Gith are, I fell in love. And let me tell you, there's a lot of lore. This might be the longest segment, and I'm leaving out a lot. These people were slaves to the Mind Flayers, who themselves are very interesting and will be their own video. But they were slaves to them for so long that the people lost their own name. They could only identify as slaves. They tried to rebel from the Mind Flayers many times, never succeeding, until one slave named Gith rose up and won their freedom. Ever since, they'd either taken the name Githyanki if they followed Gith herself, or if they follow the teachings of Zerthamon, who questioned Gith motives after the uprising. They then call themselves Githzerai. Now, the Githyanki are not well liked in the Plains, because since gaining their freedom, along with continuously fighting the Mind Flayers at every chance they get, they also pillage all the different planes. They jump from one plane to another, attacking and taking what they want / need, but always actually leaving enough for the survivors of their raid to live for a while anyway. Thus, the drive to raid and fight off the Mind Flayer invasion has left them as a brutal people dedicated to warfare who thrive on bloodshed. With special silver swords to fight off mind flayers, these Githyanki hop planes on the backs of red dragons after pleading Tiamat on Valkeith's advice, who would eventually rule the Githyanki as a Dreadlich king. Spending most of their time on the astral plane, they must develop outposts to raise their children to a mature age, because on the astral plane, no one actually ages. Now, the Githzerai are very much the opposite of the Githyanki. They are studious and learned people. They live in monasteries, on the islands of order, in the sea of chaos, on the plane of limbo, rarely leaving. The teachings of Zerthimon teach very heavily about prioritizing protection and not active aggression like the Githyanki do. Their leaders are chosen by merit, and they prize how learned and practiced someone is. And I promise there's even more lore that you can dive into, but we need to wrap this up. 7. Mimic. To make up for the last one, we'll keep this one short, but who doesn't love the Mimic? I mean, the classic chest design is amazing, but the fact it can technically be anything, that's a ton of fun. And you can change it to whatever you know your players are going to want, and boom, you got them trapped in a very sticky situation, where if they survive, they have a good chance of getting some good loot. And who doesn't love loot? Side note, some can get smart enough to talk common. Leaving that there. 6. Displacer Beast. After being bred in the Feywild for their ferocious and predatory nature, they then broke out of their master's hold, terrorizing the Feywild until they were pushed back to the edges of the plane and into the material plane. These beasts can cast mirages and completely fool their prey. They're experts at ambushes, especially if they're in a pack. They lure and attack for sport, even when they're not hungry. While being pushed back on the plains of the Feywild, their previous masters used blink dogs, and to this day, there's a very quote-unquote natural rivalry between these two, and they fight on sight without fail. 5. Animated objects. More commonly, it's animated armor, even though technically it could be anything that's animated, like a pile of books or a few logs. But there's also a weapon aspect. Flying swords and the like are all animated objects, and you can basically get as creative as you want with this. The book even offers the Rug of Smothering, which is just that, a rug that will smother and grapple someone. These items are crafted with potent magic and will obey the will of the creator. They are constructs, so they don't need food or water, and they are perfect as guardsmen for the BBG or the surprise encounter in a Raggedy Shack. 4. Owlbear. If you don't like owlbears, you're probably dead. Just so you know. Don't try and seek medical help, you're probably too far gone. It's an owlbear. It's an owl, it's a bear. What more do you want? Despite how much we love them, or maybe I love them, they don't love us back, or anything for that matter, even other owl bears. They're some of the most ferocious predators around. They will attack without provocation anything it thinks it can take. They will pair up as mates, but outside of their immediate owl bear family, they will not play nice. And even once the young are ready to hunt, they're on their own. Some elven communities encourage owlbears to nest under their treetop villages as a natural form of defense. Very few brave enough to try their luck at taming an owlbear are successful at it, but those that are rewarded with a mighty guard or a mount. People of remote frontier settlements have been known to race owlbears, with people betting on which rider will be attacked by their mount. Hobgoblins like them as war beasts, whereas hill giants and frost giants are known to keep them as pets. The origin of this creature is one for debate, with some claiming that they have been in the Feywild for thousands of years, and others claiming the same for their plane. But still, most claim that a mad wizard combined a giant owl with a bear. 3. Lycanthropes. Diversity is key. You got all the wares here. Were-boar, were-bear, tiger, rat, and of course your werewolf. Lycanthropy is one of the most ancient and feared curses. It turns a normal humanoid into a wild beast. The curse is so overwhelming that even the physical traits of the humanoid, when not transformed, will resemble the creature they turn into. Just with everything, there are good and bad lycanthropes. Some humanoids hide amongst people and terrorize them at night when in their were form, while others live secluded lives in isolation to protect anyone from harm. It is a curse that can be passed down from a bite, from one person to another, or even passed down genetically. If you are bitten, you may be cured by remove curse. However, if you're born as one, there is no cure outside of extremely powerful magic like Wish. Living with the curse is something most end up doing. Some fight the curse and live most of the time as their usual selves, falling prey to the curse on a full moon. This will also happen if they are cursed but unaware they have been cursed. Some have no memory of their shape-shifting nights. However, some feel like there is no point in fighting the curse and embrace it. They, over time, can learn to control their shape-shifting and do it at will. However, they will always succumb to the bloodlust and become the terror in the night. 2. Giants. Now, again, I love lore, and I love giants because of their lore. I mean, it's just, in the 2014 Monster Manual alone, the giant section is 8 pages long. And then, once you break into Storm King's Thunder, it's basically a whole modular about the giant's lore. Now, giants are a monster that have their roots at the beginning of known time. Giants were some of the first creatures to inhabit the material plane, along with dragons, with whom the giants have had a long, bitter rivalry with, dating back as far as anyone can remember. The rivalry persists today, and they rarely will be near each other and not fight. After some time, the giants grew to empires all across the land that held renowned dragon slayers and learned thinkers, as well as kings and nobility. Eventually, however, this mighty empire fell. Now, giants are scattered and divided amongst secluded clans. Even still, they uphold traditions and customs of their epic past. There are several kinds of giants, all of whom play their own role in a strict hierarchy of giants. At the top are storm giants, followed in order by cloud giants, fire giants, frost giants, stone giants, hill giants, and finally giant kin, like ogres and enten. Giants fully believe in this caste system, and there are no two giants of equal value. So every giant knows its place in the hierarchy. Their deeds may increase or decrease their status. However, the divide between the two different types of giants is very big. For example, a hill giant chief is still lower than the lowest stone giant. The giants call the system the ordning. Now, this video is long enough as is, so I think I'm going to save the rest of the giant lore for its own video. So stay tuned for that, please. Number 1, goblins. Okay, you gotta hear me out here. I mean, it's the quintessential monster in D&D. It's like rats in the basement trope in video games. It's the low-level monster you should be fighting. And if you've played D&D without slaying yourself a selfish little blood-hungry globinoid, I genuinely feel bad for you. It's so quintessential that what is, in my opinion, the best D&D inspired anime is legitimately called Goblin Slayer. Not Beholder Slayer, not Dragon Slayer, no, Goblin Slayer. which all makes sense because the goblinoid family itself is fairly extensive, containing bugbears and hobgoblins, even keeping pet rats and wolves and wargs and mounting the later two. So on one short quest, you can encounter a few different types of monsters that canonically not only have a reason to be together, but a whole hierarchy based on strength as well, where hobgoblins and bugbears and even goblin bosses, or kings and the queens if that's what they want to be called, bully the goblins into being their servants. It's so engraved into them that the goblinoid god is only their god because when they die, they will be forced to join his army, and if they didn't worship him, they will be punished by a very cruel tyrant. Like, it's insane. I love them. And that is my personal favorite top 10 monsters in the 2014 Monster Manual. If you have made it this far, you are now part of the current. Welcome. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. You've made it this far. You clearly like the content. This series is shaping up to be one that's really inspiring me to keep going. So until the next one, peace.